I'm Christine, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm here with my February mid-month wrap-up. So it is now the middle of February and I'm here to quickly just wrap up the books that I have read so far for the month. So we're just going to quickly get into them. Of course, as always, if you ever want to see more of my thoughts or my full reviews on any of these books, I do review every book I read on Goodreads, and you can get to that through the description of all of my videos. There's always a link to my Goodreads, to my Instagram, to all of the things. I'm looking at the list now, and a lot of these books I have already talked about on my channel through some other videos. I did a recent video where I talked about like 20 new releases I have read so far this year. So there are quite a few that I read this month that are on that video as well. So I will link that in the description of the video as well as in the cards. So if you want to go watch that and see my thoughts on a lot of new releases recently from January and February, that is there. February kind of started off a little bit, I don't know, like rocky for me, I guess you could say, like with my reading at least. Like the way that House of Flame and Shadow put me in a massive book slump, like it was a thing. It happened. That book is right up here, just eyeballing me right now. I'm actually rereading it right now and loving it so much. But that book definitely put me in a book slump. Like I just wanted to stay in that world, stay with those characters. I feel like Sarah J. Maas books do that to me in general. It's just been so long since this book like took what, like 2 years since her last book came out. So yeah, definitely put me in a book slump, which I just wanted to immediately go back into her world, stay there forever. I love rereading her books so much. They're my all-time favorites, and like comfort and joy, all of those things. So I am rereading that one right now and just kind of like physically annotating and highlighting my physical copy. So that's happening this month as well, kind of in the background, and that's definitely what happened at the beginning of the month. So like my reading definitely started off slow for the month. Like I wasn't reading and finishing books for a lot longer than usual. I just wasn't wanting to get to them. So that was a thing. But anyways, now I'm okay. All right, so first up, I read You With a View by Jessica Joyce. This one had been on my TBR for, I feel like since last year, like when it came out. So at the time I wasn't sure if I wanted to check it out, but then I read one of the author's like holiday novellas that she put out around Christmas time. I really enjoyed that, so I decided to put the Libby hold in for this book. So I did that and my Libby hold finally came in. And so this one I read and I gave it 4 stars. This one starts off with basically the heroine. She is going through some old letters and photos of her grandmother. She was super close with her grandmother and her grandmother passed away. And so she's going through some of her things and she finds these letters from this mystery man who was definitely not her grandfather, but that her grandmother seemed to have had this love affair with, which not like an affair, but like this massive love affair that she had with this man pre-grandpa. So anyways, she finds these letters, she finds some photos of them, and she kind of wants to know more about it because she felt like her and her grandmother were always super close, and she can't believe that there is this part of her grandmother's life that she doesn't know, and like she's not ready to deal with the kind of the healing and the grief that has come with losing her grandmother. So she decides, you know what, I want to find out like who this is. She gets on TikTok, posts the photos, kind of posts the story, and is like, if anybody knows who this mystery man is with my grandma back in the day, like let me know. Which it ends up going viral overnight, which okay, sure, but she ends up from that finding the man who was like, that's my grandpa in that photo, like I know him. So she ends up reaching out to him. Not only do they live in the same town as her, or they live nearby, and they're able to meet up, and the guy's like, yeah, my grandpa's still alive, like we will come and meet, like me and him together. So when he gets there, she actually realizes that she knows the man's grandson who has been the one communicating with her. Like they were actually rivals, I think, kind of rivalry in high school. So they all kind of hit it off and she wants to spend time with him. Like she wants to get to know her grandmother through this other man's eyes and kind of the relationship they had and all of those things. The heroine is also a photographer as well. She has a passion for that, and she finds out that the man who her grandmother was with back in the day was a photographer as well. So they kind of connect over that, and she wants to see like photos and letters that he has from her grandmother to him back in the day. And so they just kind of like start hanging out a lot. And so over time they actually all end up going on a road trip together, like her, the man who was with her grandmother back in the day, and the hero who is his grandson. So they're actually going on a road trip and they go to all the places that her grandmother and this man plan to go to on their honeymoon, which kind of strange, but like that never happened obviously, but that is their road trip. And so of course along the way we see her and the hero falling for one another. This one, the romance was super cute. I liked how it was mixed in with some photography since that's the heroine's passion. Their road trip that they're on, I thought the hero was super sweet. He's also kind of dealing with the complications of his business and things with that. The heroine as well is dealing with the grief of her losing her grandmother and kind of going through all these complicated feelings that she has with her grandmother having a secret from her. And so it kind of goes from there. The conflict in here was definitely not my favorite, but the epilogue kind of brought it all back together, and I thought it was super cute and sweet. The epilogue actually reminded me of a lot of like TikTok couple relationship reel trends, so that was fun as well. So this one was cute and sweet. I gave it 4 stars. I also gave the author's like holiday novella 4 stars as well. So I feel like this is an author I'll definitely check out again in the future. I think they have a new book coming out this spring or summer, and so I'll definitely try it out again and see how it goes. Next up, I read Through the Glen by Samantha Young. This is the newest / third book in her Highlands series, and so this one is like a romantic suspense, kind of small town / set in Scottish Spanish Highlands series. So I loved book 1, and this book, like I said, it's book 3, and this one I gave 3.5 stars. So in this one, basically the heroine is a housekeeper at this estate that the whole series kind of focuses on, which this whole estate is where the kind of rich and famous can go and like get away from life and things like that. And so she's a housekeeper there, and she's also secretly a like super popular crime selling author as well. She has this like whole series, and so the hero is one of the guests at the estate that she works at. And so one day she decides to ask him for help because he's a Viscount's like second son, as well as he is a kind of screenwriter, a producer, like he makes TV shows and movies and things like that. So she goes to him and she's like, hey, I'm actually like a secret best-selling author, and like here's my book series, like would you pick this up and make a show out of it, because I feel like we'd like partner up and you do so well with my series, like bringing it to life. And so the hero at first is like, oh wow, like you're a writer, like oh my god. And so she tells him about her pen name, things like that. And so at first he ends up telling her that no, he's not going to help her because he kind of has this kind of like snobbish attitude, I guess, of where he doesn't adapt anything that he hasn't written himself. And so he's like, no, like I don't pick up other people's stuff. And so he's also kind of having though a writer's block. And so he decides to, on a whim, after like meeting her, picks up her book series and starts devouring them and finds himself obsessed, and like he can see scenes playing out and all of these things. And so he's like, oh my god, like yeah, we're gonna have to make this a show, like I can't stop thinking about it. So it kind of goes from there. This one I just wasn't super in love with it as I have been with the first book. Like it was okay, but it's definitely not a favorite for me. I did have some issues with the hero, and like I wanted a little bit more from the romantic suspense, and like with the suspense as well, I wanted those kind of elements to have already shown up earlier in the book. But I mean, it is what it is. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think I rounded up to 4, but yeah, so that is Through the Glen. Next, I decided to do a reread because like I said, the beginning of the month, I just wasn't feeling it and couldn't find anything that I wanted to pick up or give my attention to. And so I decided to do a reread of Jennifer Hartman's Heart Song Duet. So the first one is An Optimist's Guide to Heartbreak. This book was like my favorite read of 2023. I read it last January, and so I decided to pick it up this year, and I loved it. Like I loved being back with these characters. This is like ultimate grumpy sunshine, with the hero being so moody and broody, which is like my favorite thing ever. They basically were raised as neighbors, and then some tragedy hit and they both kind of like moved away and went separate ways. Now the heroine is back in their town, and she actually ends up purchasing his house that he grew up in, where she like lived next door to, because it comes available for sale. And so she ends up purchasing it and wants to track down the hero and like find him again and reconnect. And so she ends up tracking him down at the car shop that he owns and works at. So it kind of goes from there of her running into him, and she's expecting him to be super excited to see her as well. She is like the ultimate sunshine, bubbly heroine. And when she meets him, she realizes that he is totally different than the man that she knew back when she was growing up. He has grown up to be very like moody and broody and cold and closed off, and he doesn't want to talk about their past at all. And he kind of doesn't even want her in his shop. She does end up getting a job there, and she just wants to bring like joy and love and laughter and fun back to his life. And so that's kind of her mission. And so it starts off from there. This one, like, it's Jennifer Hartman, so you know she's going to bring some emotional elements as well. So yeah, I love this one. I gave it 5 stars again, like no surprise. And then I jumped into the second book as well, which is A Pessimist's Guide to Love. This one again, I gave it 5 stars as well. This one, how the first book like is more kind of sunshiny and this positive outlook kind of to things, like the second book is definitely the opposite. Like they go together really well. It just has a different vibe. Like it's a very moody and broody, and so I love it personally. I liked the kind of darkness that we get in this one and the emotional elements. I love them together and think it's a really strong duet. So yeah, I had a good time with this one. I love the series so much, so there is that. Then I jumped into Stay With Me by Brooke Montgomery. This one I had an arc of, and this is the second book in her Sugarland Creek Ranch, something like that series. This one I sadly gave 2 stars to, and I really did not enjoy. This one was basically described as a surprise pregnancy where the heroine is pregnant with the wrong man's baby, and the hero is this cowboy hero who takes her in and kind of is the one that she falls for. So that is what I expected going into this. I loved the first book in the series, which was an ex-boyfriend's dad romance. Loved that one so much, ate it up. I'd fully expected to love this one as well, and this one was just a major letdown. I feel like there were so many things happening, so many plot points, so many like random moments thrown together. It felt so disjointed. I couldn't get into it. Like I was waiting for the surprise pregnancy to hit, and it doesn't even hit until 70% into the book, which I couldn't believe. Like I literally thought I was reading a different book, like the wrong book. There was just a lot of moments in here that I didn't enjoy. The hero and the heroine have kind of grown up together. She is his sibling's best friend, and so they're always kind of around one another. Like everybody knows they have feelings for one another, and they're just like afraid or don't admit it to each other. So we see a bunch of flashbacks throughout the years of them hanging out, having like almost moments. There's this moment where her ex-boyfriend like drugs her and accidentally drugs the hero's sister, and like I feel like that should have become more of a thing, but instead that's the man that she gets back together with years later and gets pregnant with. So I didn't like the handling of that as well. Like, you can see my full like kind of ranty review about this on Goodreads. I don't even want to talk about this book anymore. 2 stars. Didn't like it, don't recommend, like, on to the next. Next, I had an audio ALC of An Education and Malice by S.T. Gibson, and this one I gave 3.5 stars to. So this one I was really excited to get into. It is sapphic, it's a Carmela retelling, it's vampires, it is gothic-y. Like, I was excited. It's all the things that I love. But instead, this one just sadly didn't hit right for me. Like, I read A Dowry of Blood, I think, what, 2 years ago now, and I really loved that one from this author. Like, that one's 5 stars. I love it so much. This one I was expecting to love as well, and it just sadly didn't do it for me. There was just like something missing from it. Like, it is a dark academia setting. Like I said, it's sapphic, it's vampires, it's a Carmela retelling, which is one of the like original vampire sapphic stories. And so I was excited for this retelling, and this one just didn't give enough for me. Like, I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. So 3.5 stars for me. And then I had another audio ALC of Claim Me Forever by A.L. Jackson. This is the 3rd book in her Time River series. This one I also gave 3.5 stars to. So the first 2 books in the series, I gave both of them 5 stars and fully expected to love this one as well. And this one's just sadly didn't hit the same as the other ones did for me. So this one is small town. The hero is basically like, I think, a sheriff in the town, and the heroine is kind of trespassing when the story starts and ends up getting arrested because she's on private property. And so the hero kind of sees something in her right away. Like, he is the ultimate cinnamon roll sweet hero. I did love him. But so he basically sees something in her and wants to like help her out. So he ends up like finding her a place to stay, finding her a job, like all of these things. But she like continuously keeps trying to break into places, and he keeps finding her. So she definitely has some secrets of why she's in town. Kind of goes from there. The hero's a single dad as well. This one, both the hero and the heroine are definitely tortured souls. They have a lot to work through. He has some grief to work through. She has, of course, her own secrets that she's working through. This one, the romantic suspense elements in here were really strong. So there were moments I liked. I just didn't like super love this one, so that's why I gave it 3.5 stars. I'm still excited for the rest of the series. Like, this one just wasn't a favorite for me. Next, I read Serpentine Valentine by Gianna Darling, and I love this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. This is dark academia. It is a Medusa retelling. It is sapphic romance, and it is just so good, so beautiful. This one, it felt so different than other Gianna Darling's writings and books, but at the same time, it totally felt like her lush writing that I love too. Topics in here are very heavy and dark, so just know that. There's content warning in here for sexual assault and rape as well, so just know that. I think it happens on chapter 2, which you can skip, but like the entirety of the book kind of focuses on these sexual assaults and attacks on a college campus, so just know that going in. This one though, I love the story. I loved seeing Lex and Luna fall for one another, but on top of that, like on top of the beautiful romance, I really just loved seeing Lex get her revenge. I love a revenge plot, and like this one was so needed because of the horrible things that happened to her. This one definitely delves into, like I said, college campus sexual attacks, like not just on Lex, but on other people in the book as well, and she's definitely fighting for all of those who have been attacked and maybe aren't able to get their revenge, that they're being told that they're lying, they're victim blamed, people don't believe them, people like cover up the stories, all of these things. And so I loved seeing her get her revenge on this and just kind of bringing light to this story. So I really enjoyed that. I loved it so much. Definitely a favorite for the month for me. Next, I read Head Over Heels by Carla Sorensen. This one is the 2nd book in her Wilder family series, and this one I gave 3 stars to. This one I feel like it kind of runs the line of more of women's fiction and kind of just following the heroine and the hero's story. We really focus on the hero's family in this one a ton. Like his family, his father is dealing with a terminal illness, and so the whole family kind of focuses on that throughout the story, and is definitely a major plot point of the book. Like the whole epilogue kind of deals with that as well. So I wanted just a little bit more of the couple and the romance in here. They end up actually meeting in an elevator when the story starts. They both get locked in together, and they're total opposites. Like he's kind of from the small town and she is a city girl, and so they end up actually like really connecting while they're trapped in the elevator together. They end up making out, they end up sharing things with one another that they don't share with like people in their lives, and kind of just like getting it all out. So once they get out of the elevator, they go their separate ways, and then it's like a month later when the heroine actually shows up in his small town and is around him and his family, so they kind of reconnect there. She was basically sent to the small town as a punishment from her father, who she works with and is in business with, and her father kind of like had this arranged marriage for her, and so she kind of decides she's not willing to do that. So as a punishment, her dad kind of sends her to the small town where there's this house there, and she has to renovate it and things like that. So it kind of goes from there. Like I said, I just wanted a little bit more romance in here and less focus on the hero's family, but I mean, it is what it is, so I gave it 3 stars stars. I haven't loved this series, but I do love this author, so like I keep trying. Next, I decided to jump into the Underworld series by Karina Halley. So I had these fantasy romances on my TBR for the month, and so I wanted to get into them. So the first one is River of Shadows, and this one I gave 4 stars to. So this one I really loved the kind of blend of fantasy romance with Finnish mythology and kind of all of that. This one definitely has like Hades and Persephone vibes, as well as like Beauty and the Beast vibes as well. Basically in here, the heroine, she lives in the States, she lives in the US, and she ends up finding out that her father has passed away. So she ends up taking off and going to Finland for the funeral and all of that. And so she's dealing with like the grief and the sadness of all of that. And when she gets there, she ends up finding out that there's a little bit more to the story than she thought. She finds out that her father was like this powerful shaman, and it kind of goes from there, where she ends up finding out that her father is not dead, but he's actually trapped in the realm of the dead. And so she ends up being able to go there and trying to like barter for his life back. And so in the meantime, she deals with the like god of death or whatever, which is the hero, and she ends up getting her father out of there, and he can go back to like the living human world while she has to stay in the realm of the dead. This one I just really enjoyed. I love the like atmospheric vibe to it. I loved how it was quick and like fast paced. Like the moments that were supposed to be slow were just like deliciously slow and drawn out, but then the rest of the story was just like very snappy and happening. I really enjoyed the whole vibe of it, like this mythology mixed with fantasy. I did really enjoy it. It had a little bit of dark elements, but not like crazy dark or anything. So yeah, I liked this one and I gave it 4 stars. It definitely left off on a cliffhanger, so I jumped right into the second book, which is Crown of Crimson. So this one I sadly didn't love quite as much as the first book, so this one I gave 3 stars to. This one, like I said, it leaves off on a cliffhanger on book 1, so you definitely have to read that book before jumping into this book. And like, I don't want to say too much because it is a continuation of the story. There's apparently going to be a 3rd book as well, which I think hasn't come out yet. I'm not sure. But yeah, so this one I felt like it just had a lot going on and it didn't all like fully make sense or make sense why we were following these different plot points, and I like just didn't care about some of the reveals that were happening. So I don't know, it just kind of like lost its luster or steam for me. So we'll see if I do pick up the 3rd book whenever that comes out. I'm not sure. These ones were available through audio on Hoopla, so like that's where I grabbed them from the library. So I might check out the 3rd book if it ever comes out on audio and is there as well, but like I'm not gonna purchase it or go out of my way to read it. So I don't know. It was okay, but I really enjoyed the first book more. Next, I had an arc of At First Spite by Olivia Dade. This is the first book in her new Harlot's Bay series, and this one I gave 3 stars to. So this one is basically an ex-fiance's brother romance, where basically the heroine was engaged to somebody, they were due to be married, and a week before their wedding he called it off, which is actually due to the fact of his brother talking him out of the wedding. And so then the heroine ends up having to move to the hometown of the ex-fiance and her ex-fiance's brother, who is the hero. So she ends up having to move to his small town because she quit her job, she packed up her life, she purchased this house as a wedding gift to her like fiance, but then he called off the wedding, and so now she has nowhere else to go, and so she has to end up moving in to this house. The house is known as the Spite House because it's basically one of those like townhouses that is built in the tiny little narrow crook between these 2 giant townhouses. And so like the hero lives on one side and his brother / her ex-fiance lives on the other, and now her house is like fit right through the middle of those. And so her ex-fiance ends up actually going on their honeymoon trip and all of those things. So he's like out of the picture for most of the book, but we see the heroine kind of living next to / moving in to the hero / her ex-fiance's brother. And so she knows all the things that he said about her throughout her engagement with his brother. She knows that he isn't a fan of her, that he tried to talk his brother out of the wedding, which obviously happened. And so there are some like conflicted feelings there in the beginning. We of course know that it's just because the hero was like into her and didn't think that her and his brother were perfect for each other, that they weren't going to make one another happy. So it was like nothing personal with her. He just didn't like them together, and like not just because of the fact that he liked her. So it is a whole thing. Anyways, this one was just kind of a miss for me. It felt very much women's fiction. This is another book that was described as a rom-com, which I've been seeing that a lot with some new releases I've read this year that are described as rom-coms and then they're not a rom-com at all. Like they have really heavy like topics and themes. I don't know, it didn't give me rom-com vibes at all. Like I said, it was okay. I love the like plus size rep. I did like the hero. He's super sweet. He's actually a virgin hero as well. He's super into her. I just thought that it happened a little too quickly. Like they just got over all those things really fast. And yeah, I just wanted, I don't know, something more from this one. This author has been kind of hit and miss for me in the past, so I decided to give this one a try anyways. Not sure I will try their books in the future. We'll see. 3 stars. Next, I jumped into Check and Mate by Ali Hazelwood, and this one like really surprised me and I had a good time with it. So this one I gave 4 stars to. So this one's described as YA, but I would say it's more new adult. Like we're dealing with characters characters who are 18 and 20, and it just has more adult-ish content, if that makes sense. Like when you read the book, you'll definitely know. But I enjoyed this one. Like I really liked it. I love chess, so it focuses on chess a ton, which if you can't tell by this super adorable cover, basically in here, the hero is a professional chess player and he's like the best in the world. And so she ends up beating him one time during a match, and like he can't believe it. He can't get over it. He can't stop thinking about her. And so it kind of goes from there with her kind of being this underdog slash newbie to the chess world. Like she kind of grew up, her dad played chess and she was growing up playing it as well, but she stopped. And so she hasn't like picked it up since, but now she's kind of like pulled back into this chess world. So I really enjoyed it. Like I said, it's very chess heavy. I love chess. I grew up playing chess. I actually was on like a chess team in high school as well. So I had fun with all of those chess moments, and like I thought it was super interesting. I loved the dynamic between the hero and the heroine. He is like so smitten for her, which I loved. This one felt so fresh and so different compared to other Ali Hazelwood books. So I really appreciated that as well. It was just so fun, super cute. I really enjoyed it. The heroine has a fun relationship with her sisters, who she kind of takes care of along with her mother who is ill. And so I don't know, I just really enjoyed this one. So I gave it 4 stars. I did the audio. Definitely recommend maybe checking it out if it was on your radar. Next, I had an arc of Where We Belong by Ashley Munoz. This is the second book in the Stone Writers MC series, and I love this one. I gave it 5 stars. So the first book in the series was Where We Started, and I read that back in December of last year and loved that one. And this one I loved just as much, maybe more. There were like different aspects I loved of this one more and different aspects of book 1. Either way, I love both books in the series and you should check it out. So this one, like I said, it follows an MC and it's kind of set in this small town. And so we have like kind of dark elements, but it's not as dark as other MC series. So if you're kind of new to MC or just kind of wanting and maybe like more of a lighter-ish vibe to it, maybe check it out. I really enjoyed this one. This is kind of like a hate to love, bantery, so good, moody, broody hero who feels like he shouldn't let anybody in close to him because he doesn't want to risk hurting them or losing them. I was obsessed. Like I loved the chemistry between the hero and the heroine. I will say it kind of started off a little bit slow with like seeing a flashback of when they first met 3 months ago, which happens in book 1. And then we kind of see them in present day as well. At first, I wasn't sold on like the flashback moments, but over time, like it totally won me over. And like I said, I gave it 5 stars. I was obsessed. So we see definitely like the push and the pull between them. They have this amazing chemistry and connection. They really just like get one another. They are like each other's person. But the hero, like I said, he has these kind of conflicted feelings of letting anybody in close to him. He doesn't want to hurt them or risk them. Like he's the president of the MC club. And so he doesn't want to kind of risk that chance of her becoming collateral to hurt him, to hurt the club, any of those things. And so he definitely tries to push her away, but he's also like so drawn to her, like the chemistry between them, like chef's kiss, so good. So yeah, I love this one. Just so good. I love this whole series. I can't wait for more. I think there's going to be 2 more books in the series and I'm very excited. So yeah, 5 stars. Next, I read Till Dawn, Tames the Night by Megan McKinney. So this is the February historical romance book club pick, which I am a co-host for. This is a historical romance book club that we read books before the year 2000. And so we're going to already have a live show for this coming up. I think the live show is February 25th, I want to say. So I don't want to say too much here, but this one sadly didn't do it for me. I'll definitely talk more about it in the live show. I am not sure what I'm going to give this one. Like I'm kind of like 2.5 stars. I don't know. It was okay. It's supposed to be a pirate historical romance and it just had a lot of push and pull between the hero and the heroine over and over again. Like it's probably going to be a 2 stars for me, honestly. But yeah, I just wanted a lot more from this one and sadly this one just didn't do it for me. So yeah, join our live show on February 25th to talk about it. I can't wait to see what the other hosts think of it, which I was super sad because I loved Lions and Lace by this author. I read it last year and it was one of my favorite reads of the year. I love that historical romance so much, so I was expecting a lot more from this one and this one just sadly didn't give it to me. So then I jumped into Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I decided to wait for the audio for this one, and so I had a Libby holdout and it finally came in, so I jumped into it. I fully expected to love this book. This was actually one of my 5-star predictions for the year. And this one was just such a disappointment and I kind of like hated it, so I gave it 2 stars. This one, I thought it was going to be so good and so fun. Like it is the first paranormal romance from Ali Hazelwood. I've read all of her books now and they're kind of hit and miss for me, but like I was expecting to just be like blown away by this book. And like since it's a new kind of genre for her to jump into, I expected to be blown away. I don't know, maybe I set my own like standards too high for this one, but this one was just not it. Like I can't believe the amount of like 4 and 5 star reviews I saw for this one. Like, I felt like I was reading a different book. So yeah, basically this is a paranormal romance, and we are following a vampire heroine and a werewolf hero. He is like the alpha of the werewolves, and she is the daughter of like the vampire king, or like whatever her dad is. Basically in here, she has always been collateral. So in their kind of world, to kind of appease the politicalness of it all of the kind of different species will send one of their own, like from a powerful family, to kind of the other species to kind of keep the peace between them. So basically she was raised amongst the humans, being a vampire, to I guess show humans that like the vampires weren't going to hurt them and things like that. So she's kind of always been on the outside of the vampire kind of coven, so to speak. She's always been seen as like not like other vampire girls, if that makes sense. And so at the beginning of the story, we see her father kind of call her in, and he's like, hey, there's going to be this new thing that we need your help with as well. And so we're going to have an arranged marriage between you and the werewolf alpha to kind of, again, keep the peace between these like feuding generations worth of feuding enemies. And so yeah, you two are going to marry one another. So now she finds herself amongst the werewolves and kind of living there. We only get her POV. We only get like these little snippets of from the hero at the beginning of the chapters, which I felt like those were just so strange and out of place. I didn't love them, like his thoughts and stuff. But anyways, we see at the beginning of the story their wedding, like that's the first time they meet, and you can obviously tell he is like feeling a certain way about her because of his reactions. And then we go the whole story of this whole like political mess, her trying to find her missing best friend who was a human, and all of these things where she feels like the werewolves were involved. And so she's kind of trying to do this like infiltration within the werewolf like community when she's living there. And so it kind of goes from there. I just felt like the romance was severely lacking. The characters are not together a lot of the time, and when they are, I just didn't feel any chemistry between them. I also feel like as a paranormal romance reader, which I love paranormal romances, I feel like this one was a major disappointment. Didn't love the world. I feel like there was a lot of telling instead of showing, and I just wasn't a fan. I also didn't like the heroine, like her kind of constant snarky, I guess it's supposed to be witty, like thoughts and stuff. Like it was just too much all the time, which I guess is kind of like Allie Hazelwood's vibe and like the way she writes characters, but I don't know, this heroine just didn't work for me. So yeah, it's kind of obvious like what's going to happen with the hero and the heroine, but we have to wait until like the last 20% of the book for that to actually happen. And then when it does, it just felt like out of nowhere. Like, do you guys even like each other? I don't know. There's nodding in here, which, I mean, I love me some nodding, but like there's a time and a place. And like, I didn't feel like this book had the vibe for it. Like we didn't set it up very well, if that makes sense. It wasn't described very well. So I don't know. I feel a certain kind of way about this book if you can't tell. Like I feel like if this is your first foray into paranormal romance, I kind of feel bad because this is not like a good representation of paranormal. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like this was just a miss all around. So yeah, 2 stars. Kind of sad about it, but kind of like annoyed by it. So I don't know, there's that. Then I had an arc of Pretty Rings and Broken Things by Kat Singleton. This is the second book in her Black Ties series. So this is a billionaire romance, another arranged marriage, which apparently I'm just reading all of those this month. And it's age gap and like contemporary romance and all of those things. So in here, the hero and the heroine are from feuding families. Their families both own these like luxury hotel empires. And basically back in the day, his great-grandfather was screwed over by her great-grandfather through like a business deal that was supposed to happen. And so ever since then, their families have been kind of enemies. So now with this one, at the beginning of the story, the heroine ends up getting betrayed by somebody that she thought she was gonna like be in love with and fall for. He basically wants to go public to the media with photos and videos that he took of her without her knowing. And so he wants to like screw over her family. And so to save face, her dad decides to make this deal with the hero's family, which basically his family has more power and sway over the media. And so he wants to use that to kind of cover up, obviously, his daughter's like photos and videos that might go public. And so the hero steps in and is like, okay, yeah, like I'll marry you, because then none of that will like come to see the light of day. So that ends up happening, and they end up having this arranged marriage. This one was just a fun time. Like it is very low angst, like no angst, just cute and sweet and fun. I love seeing these two like kind of become friends along the way and make their marriage work. Their chemistry is so good. Like Kat Singleton definitely delivers on the steam. I had a good time with this one. Like I said, I gave it 4.5 stars. I think I rounded down to 4, but I just had a good time. Like it is just fun and steamy, and the hero is one of those who's a billionaire hero, and he will please and spoil the heroine all the time. And I just love that. Like I love that he fell first and was super into her, and just all the things. Fun friend group. Like we see some of the couples from some of the other books in Kat Singleton's backlist. So the couple from Tempt Our Fate, which was the Sutton Mountain series, we see them in here. We also see the couple from the other Black Ties book, which was Black Ties and White Lies, because all the heroines are best friends. I just thought this one was a fun time. Like I love seeing Kat Singleton's writing kind of evolve and get better over time. time. Like the first book in the series I wasn't a fan of, but this one was a lot more fun. All right, and then lastly, I read A Fragile Enchantment by Allison Saft. So this one I just finished this morning, and I'm still trying to decide what I'm going to give it, but I feel like it's going to be 2.5, 3 stars. Basically, this is a YA, a fantasy. It also has like a little bit of a historical fantasy element as well. So it's basically a Regency era dealing with like the Irish Rebellion and kind of England at the time, but we're not calling the people Irish and we're not calling it England. Like it's this kind of like fantasy element and has magic and things like that. The heroine in here is like a dressmaker, or she can make clothes and like sew magic into them and things like that. And so she gets hired by the kingdom to kind of help out the prince, and so she comes from her place and the magic's dying out and all these things. I don't know, this one was just a miss for me. She ends up falling for the hero, which is like the prince, and I don't know, this one just didn't do it for me. So yeah, probably 2 stars. All right, so those were the 18 books that I've read so far in February. Definitely let me know in the comments if you've read any of the same books as me, if you are picking up any of these books. If you have a favorite book so far of February, definitely let me know. I can't wait to see what the rest of February brings. There are so many new releases this month. There are quite a few more that I am excited to get into and try out, and just some other books that I want to pick up off of my own TBR for the month. So yeah, I can't wait for all of the things. If you want to leave me an emoji in the comments instead, leave me a star emoji, just because I feel like, you know, we're talking about all these star ratings for these books. So yeah, leave me a star emoji. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I will see you in my next one.